Imagine spending 3 months in a steel tube the size of a two-bedroom apartment. No sunlight, no phone calls, no fresh air. You share a bed with two other guys, and you figure out what time it is by whether you're eating pancakes or leftover meatloaf. Welcome to life on a United States Navy submarine. It's not a job, it's a different reality, and every single person on board chose to be there. If you have respect for the men and women who volunteer for this kind of service, type "proud" in the comments right now. Let them know their sacrifice doesn't go unnoticed. This is what daily life actually looks like inside a nuclear submarine. From the beds to the food to the one thing submariners are allowed to do that nobody else in the Navy can. The first thing that hits you when you step inside a submarine is the size, or rather, the complete absence of it. A nuclear submarine might be 360 feet long, but that doesn't mean there's room to breathe. A third of the vessel belongs to the reactor and propulsion systems. Then you've got ballast tanks, weapons systems, torpedo tubes, missile silos, miles of cables, pipes, and valves running through every wall, floor, and ceiling. What's left for the crew? Almost nothing. 155 people live and work inside what amounts to a network of narrow corridors and stacked compartments. Walking down a submarine hallway is an art form. You duck, you turn sideways, you flatten yourself against the wall as someone squeezes past going the other direction. There's a constant choreography of bodies avoiding each other in spaces barely wide enough for one person, let alone two. Personal space doesn't exist. Privacy is a luxury measured in the 6 inches between your face and the bunk curtain. And here's the thing. Every single one of these sailors volunteered. The submarine service is all volunteer. Nobody gets assigned to a sub against their will. Sleep on a submarine is not what you'd call restful. On the Ohio class, the largest submarine in the U.S. fleet, there are 16 bunk rooms split across the 3rd level. Each room contains 9 racks, stacked 3 high. Submariners call them coffins. And once you see the dimensions, you understand why. Each rack has a thin mattress, a small footlocker at the end, and a personal drawer for whatever you can fit. There's a shared locker in each room for hanging jackets and extra gear. Under the mattress, that's not empty space. That's where canned food is stored at the start of every deployment. You literally sleep on top of your meals for the first few weeks. And those 9 racks per room, they don't always match the number of people who need them. When the crew exceeds the number of available beds, and it often does, sailors share. This is called hot racking. When one sailor finishes his shift and climbs out of bed, the next one climbs in. It's still warm. That's where the name comes from. You don't get your own sheets, your own pillow setup, your own space. You get a warm mattress and whatever time you can squeeze out before the next watch. Some guys end up sleeping in the torpedo room, which doubles as overflow sleeping quarters and a makeshift gym. You lay your head down a few feet from live weapons. That's the reality. The crew operates on a rotating 8-hour cycle. 8 hours on watch, 16 hours off. But off doesn't mean free time. Those 16 hours get filled with maintenance, training, qualifications, and drills. What's left, if anything, is your time to eat, exercise, and maybe close your eyes for a few hours before it all starts again. Fresh water on a submarine is a limited resource. The vessel can produce its own water using desalination systems, but output is finite and demand is constant. The reactor needs cooling water, the galley needs cooking water, and 155 people need drinking water. That leaves very little for showers. Enlisted sailors share no more than 3 toilets and 2 showers. Chief petty officers get 1 shower. Officers get 1. The captain and executive officer share 1 between them. That's it for the entire boat. 155 people, 5 showers, 3 toilets. Shower time is strictly controlled, 3 to 5 minutes, tops. You get wet, soap up, rinse off, no lingering, no relaxing under hot water. On rare occasions when the water supply is in surplus, the executive officer may authorize what's called a Hollywood shower, meaning you can actually leave the water running continuously. On a submarine, that feels like a 5-star spa. Ask any submariner what makes the deployment survivable, and they'll give you the same answer: the food. Submarine food is legendary across the entire military. It's not ship galley slop. It's genuinely good. The Navy understands something fundamental about human psychology. When you take away sunlight, personal space, phone calls, and freedom, The one thing you can still give people is a great meal. Good food keeps morale high. And on a submarine, morale isn't a luxury, it's a safety requirement. Low morale leads to mental distraction. Mental distraction leads to mistakes. And mistakes on a submarine are not tolerated because they can be fatal. So submariners get the best food in the entire military. And the best cooks. The cooks on a submarine aren't just guys who learn to boil potatoes. They're trained at culinary school. 6 to 8 of them work around the clock to keep the crew fed. 4 meals a day, because the rotating watch schedule means someone is always waking up hungry. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a midnight meal called mid-rats. Buffet style. Same menu for officers and enlisted. No class distinction when it comes to food. And there's ice cream available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not a joke. Unlimited ice cream is an actual morale policy on U.S. submarines. The logistics of feeding 155 people for 3 to 4 months underwater are staggering. A single submarine deployment loads roughly 20,000 pounds of food. That's 1,500 pounds of ribeye rolled beef, 1,500 pounds of ground beef, 1,200 pounds of chicken breast, 400 pounds of bacon, nearly 10,000 pounds of flour, 2,500 pounds of sugar, and over 1,000 pounds of coffee. The coffee machine runs constantly. That is non-negotiable. But where do you store 20,000 pounds of food with almost no spare room? Everywhere. Canned goods get stacked under mattresses in every bunk. Sailors literally sleep on top of cans for the first few weeks. Showers get packed with non-perishable items. Eggs and perishables go into the escape trunks, which stay cold because of the ocean temperature at operating depth. Fresh food runs out first, usually within the first few weeks. After that, it's frozen, then canned, and that's when the cooks earn their reputation. Making decent meals out of canned ingredients for 155 picky sailors in a kitchen the size of a closet while the boat shifts and tilts underneath you, that takes real skill. One unexpected maneuver and everything on the stove ends up on the floor. The crew's mess, the dining area, also doubles as the main recreational space. When they're not eating, sailors watch movies, play video games, cards, and board games. Most submarines have a small gym too. An exercise bike, rowing machine, weights, boxing gloves, and a punching bag. It's not much, but in a world where you can't go outside, it matters. Submariners have a saying: the food is so good that virtually every sailor gains weight during deployment, about 10 pounds on average. That might be the only branch of the military where gaining weight on deployment is a badge of honor. This might be the hardest part of submarine life, harder than the tight spaces, harder than the lack of sunlight. You are almost completely cut off from everyone you love. There are no phone calls, no video chats, no social media, no texting, no direct messaging of any kind. The entire point of a submarine is to be invisible. Every signal you send is a signal that could be detected. And detection means the mission is compromised, or worse. Sailors rely on email, but even that is heavily restricted. Every single email, incoming and outgoing, is read and inspected by security personnel. They check for policy violations, classified information, and anything that could compromise operational security. Whether a sailor actually receives an email depends on whether it passes inspection. The only time emails can be sent or received is when the submarine surfaces or reaches a certain communication window. But even then, it's not guaranteed. Some deployments go a month or two without a single email getting through. Other times, they might manage weekly communication. It depends entirely on the mission and the threat environment. Personal electronics are essentially useless. Phones and laptops are only allowed when the boat is docked ashore. Underway, there's no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no personal connectivity of any kind. If you brought your phone on board, it sits in a locker until you see land again. There is no doctor on a submarine. The only medical provider is the Independent Duty Corpsman, the IDC, one person responsible for the health of every single sailor on board. These corpsmen have medical training that goes far beyond a typical paramedic. They can perform emergency surgery. They manage dental care, radiation exposure monitoring, food and water quality inspections, and atmospheric monitoring for the entire vessel. The control room is the brain of the entire vessel. This is where the submarine is driven, where depth and direction are managed, where sonar operators track every contact in the surrounding water. Every major decision flows through this room. Navigation, fire control, threat assessment, all of it coordinated from a space not much bigger than a living room. Forward of the control room sits the torpedo room and the weapons launch console. On ballistic missile submarines, there's a separate missile control center where the crew monitors warhead safety, maintains targeting data, and keeps the launch systems at constant readiness. You can think of the launcher console as the brawn of the weapons system and fire control as the brains. Nuclear ballistic missile submarines exist for one purpose: deterrence. They are one leg of the nuclear triad, alongside land-based ICBMs and strategic bombers. Their job is to disappear into the ocean and remain undetected, carrying enough firepower to end a civilization. That responsibility falls on the shoulders of 155 volunteers who chose this life. Now, you might be wondering, do Russian and Chinese submariners live like this too? The short answer is, it depends, and in most cases, they have it worse. Russia's newest ballistic missile submarine is the Bore class. It carries a crew of about 107 people, roughly 50 fewer than the American Ohio class. That sounds like more room per person, right? Not exactly. The Bore is significantly smaller, at 24,000 tons submerged versus the Ohio's 18,700. Russia compensated by cutting crew size through automation rather than by giving sailors more space. Living conditions on the Bore are better than older Soviet-era boats: individual bunks, a small gym, even a library. But the overall standard is still noticeably below what American submariners experience. The food quality, the variety, the 4 meals a day policy, the unlimited ice cream, that's distinctly American. Russian submariners eat well compared to the Russian surface fleet, but the menus are simpler and the galley is smaller. The old Soviet Typhoon class, the largest submarine ever built at 48,000 tons, actually had a swimming pool and a sauna for its crew of 160. That sounds luxurious, but it was an exception driven by the sheer size of the vessel. The Typhoons are all retired now. Modern Russian boats are built leaner. China's situation is more concerning. Their current ballistic missile submarine is the Type 094 Jin class. It carries 12 missiles compared to Ohio's 24, half the firepower. The crew size is estimated around 120, but the boat itself is significantly smaller at roughly 11,000 tons submerged. That means tighter quarters, less storage for food, and shorter patrol endurance, estimated at 70 to 90 days compared to the Ohio's 90 to 120. But the biggest issue with Chinese submarines isn't the beds or the food, it's noise. The Type 094 is louder than Soviet submarines from the 1970s. American sonar operators can hear a Jin class coming from an enormous distance. When you're trying to hide in the ocean carrying nuclear weapons, being loud is a fatal flaw. China is building the next generation Type 096 to fix these problems. Quieter, bigger, with 16 or more missiles. But it hasn't entered service yet. And even when it does, nobody knows whether the living conditions, crew training, or patrol endurance will match what the US Navy has been perfecting for 60 years. Here's the bottom line. The American submarine fleet doesn't just lead in missiles, reactors, and stealth. It leads in something harder to measure, but equally important: how it takes care of its people, the best food, individual racks on the biggest boats, culinary school-trained cooks, 24/7 ice cream, Hollywood showers when the water's good. These aren't luxuries. They're how you keep 155 volunteers sane, focused, and operating at peak performance for 3 months in a steel tube under the ocean. Russia and China can build submarines, but building a crew culture that sustains excellence underwater for decades, that's something the US Navy has that nobody else comes close to matching. No sunlight for months, shared beds that never cool down, 3-minute showers, emails that might never arrive, and a workspace where a wrong decision can mean disaster. But the food is incredible, the camaraderie is unbreakable, and every single person on board volunteered to be there. That's life on a US Navy submarine. It's not for everyone. It's barely for anyone. But the ones who do it, they carry a quiet pride that the rest of the military respects deeply. If this video gave you a new appreciation for what these sailors go through, smash that like button and subscribe. We go inside America's military every week, the ships, the weapons, and the people who make it all work. Type proud if you haven't already. These men and women deserve it.